What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So wouldn't you know it, as soon as I feel like I've gotten caught up with all the Switch 2 stuff that's been leaking out online, more stuff pops up. And now we're even moving from the hardware over to the software with multiple retail listings just appearing online. And it looks like we're dealing now with different games with some of the publishers being listed. So we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about an Xbox Developer Direct that's now been announced for this month that also includes a certain mystery game, and Ubisoft. They've been going through it, and it seems like things aren't getting any easier with Assassin's Creed Shadows once again being delayed. And well, what does this mean for Ubisoft overall? We'll go over that here today. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with RGG, as they did have a Yakuza Direct, or a Like a Dragon Direct. And in this case, they showed off more of Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which is still a ridiculous name to have to say every single time. Still, though, I think Like a Dragon Pirate is probably fine, but still, they showed off an entire direct that was actually pretty lengthy. You can see it here, and it was a bit over 13 minutes, and throughout this, they did show more gameplay and all the different elements of what is clearly a game inspired by Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is perfectly fine because for many people, kind of myself included, that's like our favorite Assassin's Creed game. And it looks like RGG is taking things to that ridiculous level with the game, and it does look really good. I do like some of the zany takes on stuff because it still realizes it's a video game that doesn't have to be serious the whole way through. So you do have some crazy mini games they have in there, but then you also have some of the more action-based combat as opposed to what I've been used to more and more recently with Like a Dragon, like Infinite Wealth, which is like that turn-based combat. Still, though, I'm excited to check this one out, and it is coming out next month, so I'll be there day one. Also, we did get that trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which is a little over 3 minutes, and in fact, if you go through it, which you can see, it looks like we do have quite a bit of new content here. In fact, as they were going through, I said, you know, I don't recognize that Skell or that character, and it seems like there's all kinds of new content that they're throwing in here, which they did say previously was going to be the case, but it's just cool to see it here now in front of us. And Xenoblade Chronicles X is a game you can just jump into if you have not played any of the Xenoblade games. It's off on its own, so there were people who were kind of curious about that online. Yes, you can pick it up without having to play 1, 2, 3, Torna. Don't really worry about that. You can just grab that. And in fact, grabbing this one isn't a bad idea because to me, I actually think it's a very good Xenoblade game, and a lot of that has to do with, yes, the Skells, but I don't know, something about just the overall like sci-fi tone more so here, where you do have like the big mechanized allies and suits you can grab. It's a really cool game, and it looks like just in general there are a lot of quality of life stuff they have here. And in fact, one of the things I noticed immediately was that the text and the UI is much more legible, which was kind of a pain on that Wii U screen if you tried using it there, or even technically on the big screen. For some reason, I just remember the text being much smaller than it needed to be. So it just seems like they took some of the things they learned most recently with 2 and 3 for Xenoblade, and technically even Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition, and worked it in here with Chronicles X. So yeah, another game to look forward to here. That one then coming out in March. So I'm already working to fill up like the first half or even first quarter now of 2025. Oh, and it's very clear that Nintendo heard everyone when it came to the Switch 2 stuff going around, because they did announce a handheld. I mean, look. Okay, maybe it's not the handheld people were hoping for. They say build the classic Nintendo system in Lego form, coming October 2025. That's right. It's a Lego Game Boy. When everyone's talking about the Switch 2, when images are appearing online, Nintendo shows up with what we're all looking for. A brick Game Boy made out of Legos. Although, you know, I will say the Nintendo is really cool, the one they did there. So I'm sure it'll be a really interesting thing to put together for Lego fans. I might even look into it, because having a Game Boy made out of Legos and maybe the fun little interactive stuff they'll do with it could actually be pretty interesting. But like, come on, Nintendo, you know what's going on online. Clearly they see it. They dropped the Xenoblade Chronicles X trailer. They drop the Lego Game Boy trailer. And then technically next week is Donkey Kong, right? Well, I guess we'll see about that. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and the Switch 2 system that continues to appear online from everyone that's not Nintendo. Like, Nintendo is just not at all really referencing or mentioning this thing at all. The only times they do, at least recently, is hey, we're not going to have anything about the next generation device at this presentation. I think the last time they directly referenced it was when they said that it will have backwards compatibility. Well, now we're even having images of this device show up where the screen is on. Like, so this just randomly appeared over on Famaboards. It seems like Lana Moon posted this, and everyone was confused immediately because it looks like the top right of the Switch 2 with the screen on, seemingly running some kind of test program. So in QA or at the factory, they'll have like basically checklists that'll run these programs that'll test different elements of the system. And that, I think, is what you're seeing here. But then even like the game card slot is open, and then they blurred everything else around it, which again, AI certainly helps with this when you take a picture and can pretty much tell your phone, hey, blur everything but this area. So we do at least have the system here with the slot open, and it almost looks like the plastics are glossy. I'm not a huge fan of glossy plastics, so I don't know if that's just maybe a prototype or something they're just playing around with here in the factory, but something to keep in mind that the glossy plastic is not exactly out of the question for something like this. And that's what I said would probably happen next. We get the system, a picture of it, and it's just on. So I don't know if they have any, I assume they don't have any games in the factory. Again, probably just a lot of test programs, but that's already a big enough deal to have some of that proprietary test software showing up on screen. But then we have actual software starting to show up. So the first thing I noticed was that GameStop had their computer systems updated, and all of a sudden listings started appearing for different accessories for this system, and it actually confirmed a pretty big feature. So this, at first I saw, was posted up by Warrior64, where we have Switch 2 Express micro SD card. So there's a 256 gigabyte card, a 512 card. There's also a Joy-Con charger grip for the Switch 2, which falls right in line with what we had with the first Switch when that came out. There was a charge grip that you could buy, and it was basically like the dog grip, like that kind of thing, but it had a charge port at the top and was able to then connect and charge your Joy-Cons while you were playing there. Now, otherwise though, micro SD card, we've already kind of talked about that because that was something that did come up with like job listings and stuff, and it actually falls in line with kind of the technology schedule that Nintendo would have, and it would work to eliminate pretty much all the load times, as that is a big thing I'm sure that Nintendo is moving towards, since that was a massive jump from like PS4 and Xbox One to PS5 and Xbox Series. And I'm sure Nintendo realizes, yes, faster storage would just be a good thing overall. So move to higher speed storage internally, and then also support these Express SD cards. But then of course you can see not even a day later, this was posted by Nintendo, GameStop decided to change those listings to dummy SKUs, and they're all just numbered. So we have up to dummy SKU 24. So just trying to hide exactly what was updated in the system, but well, they waited too long. The internet doesn't forget. It posts pictures, and now we know that at least in GameStop's system, there are Switch 2 accessories and stuff already posted and listed. But to go a bit further, it also looks like we have French retailers now posting different SKUs for seemingly games for the Switch 2, and we have some of the publishers attached to them. So over on Go Nintendo, we can see they have many of them kind of listed here, so it's a bit easier to go through. So there are 3 listings from Bethesda, 4 listings from Electronic Arts, there's 2 from Bandai Namco, 5 from Square Enix, 2 from Take-Two Interactive, and then 2 from Warner Bros. Now, going through this, it's anyone's guess as to what these could be. I guess you could try to determine some of these just through, like, for example, Warner Bros. We know that there at least have been some LinkedIn information around the idea of Gotham Knights going to the Switch 2 as a port. Well, that would be one of the Warner Bros. Games that would line up. Take-Two, I'm sure, since they have 2K, of course, underneath them, that NBA would also get a Switch 2 native version, and they'll probably try to continue on the Switch as long as they can as well. But in this case, I would assume the next big NBA game would probably be going, or maybe even the current one, hard to say. There were talks about maybe Red Dead Redemption 2 being one of those Take-Two ports, and that would be a big announcement to have, because some were wondering if maybe even the Switch 2 with the LSS and the correct development behind it would be able to push 60 frames per second, which that would be a big deal considering its console counterparts right now are capped at 30. But I think just in general, having Red Dead 2 show up on the Switch would just be a big deal. Switch 2 would just be a big deal. Square Enix, it could be a number of different titles. They've talked openly about Final Fantasy 16 going to other platforms, and I mean, that just would line up perfectly there for them. There have been hopes that maybe Final Fantasy IX Remake might be shown for the first time with the Switch 2. That would actually make a lot of sense. Bandai Namco could indeed be Elden Ring. That'd be pretty interesting to see, again, that being announced. Although, I guess some of these handheld ports don't hit like they used to because we've already seen them in handheld form on things like the Steam Deck, but still, it would be just interesting to see what they can do with the Switch 2. And then also, Electronic Arts, I assume one of the big ones there would probably be FC, and then Bethesda could just be a number of different titles. Wouldn't shock me if they want to do a native version of Skyrim again, this time for the Switch 2. Still, though, we have seen many leaks around the hardware for the Switch 2 this week, and while I'm sure Nintendo's not exactly excited to see the stuff plastered all over the internet, the thing that's really going to annoy them or if like their software and their games start getting out there online. So now to see this, of course, start to appear on French retailer sites, you start to wonder about the random GameStop listing that shows up, as we've already seen that just with the accessories, the random Best Buy leak, the random Amazon one. So now it's like, okay, Nintendo, maybe it is time to get the show on the road here, which there are already some people kind of signaling for next week. Although technically at this point, you could say that going forward about every other week coming up, and eventually you're going to be right because we'll count down to the end of March, and well, Nintendo would show it at some point. But I think it does kind of line up because we have that investors meeting, or at least investors briefing at the beginning of February. And you feel like Nintendo, if they want to make a big announcement, it would be around that time or at least a week or so before. So, hey, we'll see about next week. Maybe they don't want to run over Donkey Kong, although for me, I really wouldn't mind or care if Donkey Kong Country Returns HD had to take a back seat to the next generation device that we've been waiting quite a while to hear about. Next up, let's talk about this Xbox Developer Direct that was announced yesterday. We can see this over on news.xbox.com. They say it's time to get a look at what's next. Developer Direct is back on Thursday, January 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Fans will get an inside look at a selection of highly anticipated games coming to Xbox Series X, S, PC, and Game Pass players this year. So the games they have listed here, Doom: The Dark Ages, which makes sense. You do need to get a release date on that. We know it's coming out this year, 2025, and that should be a big time release for Microsoft and Bethesda, clearly here in id Soft. So it'll be really cool to see that one in action again, because from what we've seen so far, the game looks awesome. It looks like Doom. It's super visceral, violent, action. It looks great. South of Midnight, I think, has been looking better and better as Compulsion has shown it with different traversal and combat option stuff online. Again, need a release date for that one. But the one that I was a little surprised to see there, but I'm happy to see Microsoft getting behind it, is Claire Obscure Expedition 33. This is that game that has more of a modern take on turn-based RPGs, and a lot of people looked at it and said, this kind of reminds me of Lost Odyssey. And when the development team started talking about that from Sandfall Interactive, they said, yeah, we were heavily inspired by some of those classic RPGs, but then also some of those RPGs that came out during that Xbox 360 and PS3 era, like a Lost Odyssey. So this is a game I'm really interested in seeing more about, and it's coming out here actually in a couple of months, so I'm fully on board with that one, and it will be going into Game Pass day one as well. Now, the other thing here is we do have a mystery game. They're not telling us what it is or exactly where we're going for it. They say you'll drop into a surprise studio and hear about a game. If I had to take a guess, it's probably that Oblivion remake that's already gotten out there, and it appears that Virtuos is working on it. So I'm going to assume the mystery game Oblivion remake, and then we travel off the Virtuos and they tell us about it along with Bethesda and stuff in collaboration. So I think that would actually be a pretty cool Xbox Developer Direct. Doom, South of Midnight, Claire Obscure, and then Oblivion remake. Great way to start to set up 2025, which is a year that I think actually is going to be very, very big for Microsoft and the Xbox brand. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows, as it has now been delayed again. It was supposed to have come out in November, got pushed to February, and now it's been pushed to March 20th. Now, this was part of a press release that Ubisoft sent out. We can see that here. They say, as part of the renewed focus on gameplay quality and engaging day one experiences, it has been decided to provide an additional month of development to Assassin's Creed Shadows. This additional time will allow the team to better incorporate the player feedback gathered over the past 3 months and help create the best conditions for launch by continuing to engage closely with the increasingly positive Assassin's Creed community. The game is is now scheduled for March 20th. And so Ubisoft, I think right now is in I don't want to say dire straits, but it's not looking great for them currently. Before they mentioned this delay, they talked about how they are bringing in like a team in order to better evaluate the steps forward for Ubisoft. And that could indeed mean, hey, we're bringing people in to try to figure out if we do need outside investment, if we're looking to spin off IPs, if we're looking to just sell outright. And Tencent's been brought up. So the thing is, though, outside investment or outside purchasing, I don't really know why they would come in and want to take on the near 20,000 employees that Ubisoft currently has. I feel like they'd want to minimum cut that number in half, which, yes, means thousands and thousands of layoffs immediately. But if Assassin's Creed Shadows does well, maybe Ubisoft will be able to right the ship and then figure things up as they go, since Black Flag Remake is another game that apparently is coming here in the not-too-distant future. And that could be then 2 good Assassin's Creed games since, well, Black Flag is already established, known, it's a remake, so they at least have the groundwork, and we assume that should be a pretty good release for them. It really does come back to Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I don't think this move out of February is because they want an extra month of development. There's only so much they're really going to be able to do there, and a lot of the work probably will end up in a day one or first month patch anyway. I think this is more about getting out of the way of all these different games that are coming up or are releasing here in February, which we just talked about, Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. We also have Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Civilization 7, Monster Hunter Wilds. So there already was a lot of stuff in there. I mean, Avowed is coming out, which I know that's been back and forth, but I think just in general, that's just another game they have to contend with in terms of attention. So moving to March, maybe there's not as much stuff there. They think there won't be, but who knows? That could also fill it pretty quickly. And look, at this point, Assassin's Creed needs to stand on its own. It used to be the franchise where other companies, other publishers would keep an eye on it. Like, oh, when's Assassin's Creed coming out? Okay, so we'll try to plan around that. Not anymore. Now we have Assassin's Creed, I think, kind of dodging some of these other releases, trying to find a spot where not as much stuff is coming out so they can hopefully sell enough copies, which Assassin's Creed is big enough in the mainstream that I think it will at least sell several million copies, but will it reach Assassin's Creed Valhalla levels? I don't think so. I think that was another miscalculation by Ubisoft and actually many companies now. They look at that time during the pandemic when a lot of people were inside, and they're just working off of that as projecting going forward as to where their revenue should be with their sales, whereas that was kind of, I don't want to say a one-off, but a different time. In terms of sales, people inside having to find different ways to entertain themselves. Many people turning to games that don't necessarily do play games all the time. It was just a way for them to really get through that time period. So I think that's where we are with Ubisoft. They're going to have to hope that Assassin's Creed Shadows really lands. And if anything else, I guess they'll have plenty of time to polish this thing. And at least it won't break necessarily at launch. Hopefully. Well, I guess we'll see here in a few months as it's now coming out March 20th. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is Game of the Year Madness. Remember, we're into round 2 now, so we're seeing some of the bigger titles go up against each other. Astrobot against Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and Astrobot rolling right over Zelda here, 70% to 30%, which not too surprising, really. I mean, look, I liked Echoes of Wisdom for what it was, but the management between all your echoes and stuff and inventory stuff, it just wasn't great, scrolling through. I wish they had come up with a better way to sort of choose between these different echoes that you would call. So to me, that just became very tedious, because while I would discover a new echo, it was like, oh yeah, now I just have one more thing to scroll through to get to a bed or a stool to just climb up this side of this mountain. But Astrobot continue to roll along. Again, not too surprising. That is the number 1 seed in this bracket. So we'll see what some of these other matchups are going forward. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from 79, who says, Rocksteady should build a game around Batman and Robin. This could lead into many amazing storylines like a death in the family. I think the issue that Rocksteady has right now, and one of the reasons I said they should jump ahead to something like Batman Beyond, which would be decades into the future, is because Suicide Squad, according to them, is canon, and they're trying to fit in this box now that they've created, this Arkhamverse, for all these different storylines. And if you jump far enough into the future, I think it would make it easier for them with creative decisions and ideas that they have, whereas they still contend with the multiple games they've already made and how to place a Batman and Robin storyline. Now, they could technically get outside of the Arkhamverse and just make like a one-off game for Batman and Robin, that would be cool too. I think just in general, right now for Rocksteady, they got to go back to their roots. Get away from this live service multiplayer. We got to have battle passes and post-release spend. Like, go back to what you know, which is the single-player, narrative-driven superhero game in this case. It was incredible when Batman Arkham Asylum came out. It was even better when City came out. Night, okay, but like right now, it looks incredible. So just go back to what you know. And I think still jumping ahead to Batman Beyond, for me, is probably the move. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here on a card. Or maybe you wanted to see the latest episode of Click R3, where Ryan and myself give some of the best predictions we could come up with for PlayStation heading into 2025. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.